Okay, in this video we're checking out the new BetaFPV Beta75 Pro 2. This is essentially basically a response or follow-up to their 75X series and the 65X. They've come up with a 75 Pro 2 and a 65 Pro 2. So this is the 75 Pro 2, which is the bigger version. I probably will be getting the 65 at some point a little bit later on. Not exactly sure when, but essentially they made this version of their brushless whip here, their 2S brushless whip, as a response to the Mobula 7. Because that thing, the popularity of that thing just skyrocketed after the Beta75X came out. So the Beta75X, if you weren't aware, very similar to this, similar in size, same props in fact, and canopy camera. Bigger motors, and that one was heavier. So this one is 28 grams without the batteries, of course, and the 75X was way heavier, it was like 42 grams. And the Mobula 7 came out running 2S with two 1S batteries like this. It came in at like 28 grams and same weight as this, and that basically that became extremely popular because of the power to weight ratio. It was very fun to fly, and it came with this, some smaller motors, which BetaFPV is also duplicated here, replicated. They have also gone to the 0802. In this case, it's a 12,000 kV motor. I think on the Mobula 7, bring it in here, I think that's a 16,000 kV. Yeah, it's the same size motor, but it's a 16,000 kV, and so it's a much lower kV on the BetaFPV product. It is well, yeah, I could say it's a bit slower in terms of the top end speed, but it still has plenty of acro ability. Now, the major difference between this model and the Mobula 7 is the flight controller. They've also gone to an all-in-one flight controller ESC receiver combo, so it's a single board now instead of two boards like there was in the X series, which is also why it's a lot lighter. So it's a single flight controller plus a receiver plus a 4-in-1 ESC all together in a single board. And the flight controller, this one is an F4 flight controller, not an F3 like it is on the Mobula 7. So that is a pretty significant upgrade. I think that was one of the things that people were complaining about on the Mobula 7. It was an F3 and an F4. This one has an F4 all-in-one single board. They still have the same canopy style as on the as the X series with the camera. I think the video transmitter sits on top of the flight controller. I'll show you that here. I'll pop this off here in a second. Now it's got the same issues that I had with the X series. It's a fixed angle camera adapter, and they actually include an extra one of these. Which is kind of interesting that they include an extra one of these mounts, but not the canopy, which is, I think, what's more likely to break is this canopy. That's pretty brittle, and they've improved the mount. They used to be 3D printed, and now it looks like it's injection molded from some sort of a flexible plastic. You can see it's got a lot of give, so it's less likely this thing's going to break. So I'm kind of wondering why they included two of those and not two of the canopies, which was thought was kind of odd. But yeah, the camera and the video transmitter is separate. It also has the video transmitter is also smart audio capable, so you can change your channels and bands via the controller or via your transmitter. I guess one other thing to be noted is that the video transmitter is not power switchable, so it's only 25 milliwatts, not 25 and 200 milliwatts like it is in the X series. So if you guys like 200 milliwatts, this one doesn't have that. And one other downside that I had mentioned also in the X series is that with the camera mount and everything in this canopy, the camera angle is fixed. So you can't adjust that, and the field of view of this particular camera they're using is fairly narrow. So if you're sitting flat on the ground here, it's hard to see what's in front of you, like directly in front of you, because of the angle of the camera. So it makes it somewhat hard to fly indoors. I did try and fly a little bit indoors here. I'll show you some video here in the corner. But essentially you're looking at the ceiling, or we're looking up. So you can fly it slow indoors on 1S or 2S, and by the way, this does have the capability of doing 1S as well. They include the little jumper here to short off one of the plugs to get 1S, but I didn't really bother testing 1S because I didn't really feel that flying the Mobula 7 on 1S was all that interesting. But even on 1S, even if you could fly slow, you're still looking at the ceiling because of the camera angle. So I think out of everything that they've done to sort of match the Mobula 7, this is the one area I think that they missed, is they didn't include the ability to adjust your camera angle. I think there's a way you could probably hack up something different in here and adjust that camera angle down. and I think when I pop this off here, I'll show you some possibilities of doing that. But the way it comes out of the box, yeah, indoor flying is, I guess, less is like less possible in the standard configuration versus a Mobula 7, where you can easily adjust the camera angle up and down. Really, with just your fingers, you can just move the camera up and down and get the camera angle you want, and you can fly it indoors and outdoors that way. Okay, so go ahead and popped off the canopy, just these two screws on the side here. And you can see, I believe they're using a similar type of video transmitter here that was in the X series, but it doesn't look like it's connected via pins. It's connected via these wires here, you can see. And so it's going to be your power ground video and your smart audio. The UART controller, I think it's just, looks like it's just on there with some foam tape. And then you have your whip antenna here. You could probably stick that in here and use a zip tie to hold it, but I didn't have any trouble with it hitting the props or anything like that. I just kind of left it alone. But you probably would want to use a zip tie here and hold that down so it doesn't get in the props later and accidentally cut that off. And you can see here you have your receiver antenna right there. And by the way, this is the FreeSky version. Obviously the receiver is built into the board. They do have different versions, I think for Taba, Spectrum, DSMX, and FlySky versions of the board, so you have to pick the one that you want to get the receiver that matches your transmitter. But I think in order to get a lower camera tilt here, you're going to have to do something with this here, possibly stick some foam behind here, something like that, and angle it down, because yeah, in the standard setup here like this, you get about, I think the average has about 35-degree camera angle. And for indoor flying, for me at least, I think I would fly a little slower, getting it down, say more, like say around 10-15 degrees, 20 degrees at the most, I think is going to be better, especially for this particular camera. It's a very narrow field of view. And I think it's the same camera that was on the 75X as well. Wasn't a fan of that camera either. It was, well, you'll see the video, the picture's very high contrast, high saturation. It's and not very good light handling. You'll see that in the flight demo. Obviously, you can see here it's just soldered on via some wires, so you could probably hack that and put on a CAD-X EOS 2 like a lot of people have been doing on the 75X series. Put on your camera there, possibly hack up this mount or use a different mount altogether, and maybe perhaps one with an adjustable camera tilt. It's even possible you could probably source the Mobula 7 canopy, and that would probably fit in here as well if you wanted to do that, and get the camera tilt if you happen to have one of those lying around, for example. In terms of the batteries, mine came with two of these 300 milliamp hour 1S LiPos, and I actually put this little rubber band on here to hold them together. And the reason I put them on there is before, when I was flying it around and I was crashing, because this is kind of loose in here, that prevents the batteries from ejecting out forward. So normally you crash, hit something here, and then without that there, the batteries just fly out the front. If you crash backwards, usually because it's connected on the battery leads here, it's going to basically be prevented from ejecting because of the batteries, but then of course it's going to tug on your battery connection here on the board. But it looks like these are through wire, so it's probably less likely to happen on this board versus the Mobula 7 board, which are solder pads. But in any event, yeah, do that, and maybe put another little band on the other side after you slide the batteries through. That'll prevent it from ejecting. On the Mobula 7, they have that 3D printed part here on their frame, so that kind of keeps it in place a little bit better. But on this one here, that 3D printer part doesn't actually fit, so you can't actually stick that in there. There might be some 3D printer parts on Thingiverse that you might be able to find. If I find something, I'll put it in the description later. At this time, I didn't really bother doing that. I just put the little band in here. That seemed fine. Even when I crashed a few times, my battery didn't eject after I had put this little band on there. So just do something like that, you should be fine. Obviously, you could take this, little 1S to 2S converter off here and put on a XT30 if you want to, and then maybe use like one of the batteries that were from this is like the one I was using for the 75X, and I think it fits in here. It's the same, I think it's same or similar in size. Let me see if this fits. It's I think I tried this. Yeah, I did try this. For it does fit. it's a very tight fit. So I think that if you did this, it's probably going to put stress on these, and at some point in a crash, it'll probably break. So, not sure. Maybe they designed this for their branded battery. I think they have a 350 milliamp hour 2S battery. It's BetaFPV branded. I don't have any of those. That's probably what this size is for. So maybe someone in the comments below will let me know if that's true or not. That's probably my suspicion as to what's going on there. But the version they sent me had the two 1S connectors, and then with this connector here, it has the ones with the, and they probably, yeah, there you go. You can probably see it there. It has the folded pins. So eventually those will wear out, those will oxidize, I have heard, and then you'll get even more voltage sag than you get initially. So they're brand new, and you do get a fair amount of voltage sag. So you may want to cut these off and put some ones with the solid pins on them instead. The actual, I think I'm going to be getting some. I found a source from Banggood. I'm going to try to do a video and see if that makes any difference in terms of the voltage sag. I heard that makes a big difference in terms of less voltage sag in the middle of the flight, so you have better recoverability in your flight, especially when you're diving and stuff like that. Which, speaking of, I'll show you the flight demo here shortly. This was well, on the 75X, one of the biggest complaints was the washout. Basically yaw washout. You come out of the dive, and then it would, at the end of the dive, it would yaw suddenly, and in my case, it'd be flipped around 180 degrees, or you would just flip out and just crash. And I think that had to do with the weight. I think it was just too heavy with the ducts and everything, and the flight controller just couldn't handle that sort of flight characteristics. So when you get to this little lighter weight, and like on the Mobile 7, you didn't get as much, or they're claiming in this case no washout. Now, I did try and get this to do washouts. Like I was doing a lot of these sort of split S's over these trees. You'll see that in the flight demo. And even at the very end of the battery, when the voltage is lower, that's when you're most likely going to experience that. I didn't really get too much of that. I did get a little bit of it to come out. You can probably see that in the video, but for the most part, it seems to be gone. It's not nearly anywhere close to as bad as it was on the 75X. So it looks like the flight characteristics on the yaw washouts are a lot better now on this. And I just flew it with the tune it came with. I'm not really sure how much they tuned it or not, but I basically just bound up my receiver to my transmitter and went and flew it. So what you're going to see is how it flies out of the box. I think that they may update the tune. This might be like an early release, so not 100% sure on that, how much additional tuning there'll be on this one, but what you see on the flight demo is what I got, and I just flew it with the tune that they gave me. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and I'll show you the flight demo. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.